of light, and so we want to use the best possible channel for that. I'll bring that back to you from time to time, so please join up. So I'll start this once again like a record. Hi everybody, thanks for joining the Instagram YouTube Live, which is now on YouTube. So it's on Instagram before, like we did it the last 2 years and 3 years and 4 years, but it's time to go ahead now and go to the high quality version that we now can offer on YouTube. So topic today, cinematic lighting, single source lighting. I think it's a really important topic, and thanks so much, Benoit, for letting us use your wonderful paintings that gave me so much joy through the pandemic. So it's awesome. And as you posted, it's just really important to talk about single source lighting. So let's dive right into this. Single source lighting. You know, I was a gaffer for 20 years before I started Lightbridge as a company, and I moved ahead so I can bring the importance of light all over the world and not just to the sets I'm working on. So it's a big and great thing to do. One thing to point out here at this point is if you have any questions, this is a live event. It is here actually that questions are answered. Otherwise, it will be much easier just to record this. So single source lighting, what is that? It's, you know, moonlight coming in through a window, or it's like, say, a lampshade giving you some light. And it's always a single source. So it's not like we're used to building setups, right? Okay, we have the light coming through the window, and then we're going to do fill light, and then we're going to do this. Single source lighting really comes from motivating something. So I think that's the really important thing to talk about. So before we talk about fixtures and how to set it up, tips and tricks that can help all of us on set to create some really cinematic moods, we need to talk about the essence of cinema, right? And the essence of cinema is storytelling. And storytelling means that we have people in physical space and they're going through stuff. And our job as lighting technicians, and for your jobs out there as DPs, is to put that into a package, to say, how can we use light to help tell a story? So this is a big part of what we're going to be talking about today. And to actually start to do this, we need to talk about one of the essences of everything we do. No matter what we shoot, it always comes down to one thing. This is actually the frame. This frame actually is what our life's about. What do we put into this frame? How close are we? How far are we away with the camera? Obviously, this is a close-up now, and now we're going to go into something more further away like this. And it's everything that's in here. So we compose, we do everything for this frame inside of here. But I'll tell you a big secret. It's not so much about what's in the frame. It's actually what's outside the frame that gives us all the quality, that gives us emotions when we're watching stuff. So why is this? Let's walk through this. And I think this is the main important thing when we talk about single source lighting. So we have this frame, right? That's what we see. You see a guy with glasses sitting here in front of a gray wall, talking to guys trying to keep a frame straight, right? So that's the story we're telling right now. But what's actually happening is, and what our brain is going through, is actually what's outside of the frame. So we can say, well, it's a gray wall, there's a light coming from one direction. What could that actually be? But if we zoom out with the camera now, suddenly a different story evolves. Camera moves back, we see, okay, there's a little bit gray wall, there's a couch, and boom, there's Ladja here with us today, and we've got a lampshade here. So all of a sudden, it's like, oh, it's not a guy in front of a gray wall. Suddenly, well, what are those two people doing here? Wearing black, maybe they're going out to a concert afterwards, or they're just having a nice evening, or just sitting here talking with you guys, which is obviously the biggest fun of all. Depends, of course, on the concert that we could go to otherwise, but that's a different story. So what happens is we've got a window, right? Possibly, because light's coming from one direction. So if Louisa now pans over, as Ladja can walk to the window, and we can follow her, we can see, okay, there's some stuff happening actually outside. So there is actually a physical space that's happening. So as Ladja sits down again next to me, it's like, okay, suddenly this room got a different meaning. You see that? There was just a couch with a gray wall, and all of a sudden you know, nah, it's actually a window there. There's actually a frame, there's a room. There's actually a room outside of the room that we're showing. There is a frame, and actually outside of that frame, stuff's happening. And it always comes down to the same thing. And I think that's what I talk about, you know, from every live event we do to the next one. At the end of the day, everything we're doing, that we're shooting, is made for people that are watching it. Humans watching the stuff that we're shooting. So we're trying to create emotions for those people watching it. And so we have to talk about what humans actually do. Just think about when you enter a room for the first time. You scan the room. You look, where's the window? Does it feel comfortable? Doesn't it feel comfortable? Where do I want to walk? Where don't I want to walk? So our brain goes through this whole, the animal inside of us goes through this whole thing, trying to decipher what actually is going on in this room. And from there, we decide we feel comfortable, we don't feel comfortable for whatever reason, right? So that's what actually happens. We take a frame of a room, we walk in, we see a master, then we go into close-up, there's a person we want to talk to, we go to there. And what we do in editing is exactly that. We try to decide what frames do we compose together to create the room. And when we talk about single source lighting, when we talk about motivated lighting, that's actually what they're trying to do. We're trying to help people understand what happens in the room. So we now have got a relationship from a window to Slaja sitting here to me sitting here. That, of course, could all change. Let's say if I take down the contrast. See how everything changes up again? Suddenly it's not that bright and nice little room. It's two people sitting here on a couch, a complete different meaning. So if Slaja would get up again and go to the window for a moment, it's more contrast. Doesn't it feel, see how the tone of emotion changes because the room's all dark and Slaja's looking out of the window, and it's dark and it's gloomy and it's not bright. Suddenly, again, we go back to the thing. Thanks, Slaja. Suddenly we go back, our brain starts to do stuff because of stuff happening outside of the frame. Suddenly we go from this bright room to, oh, it isn't that bright. Maybe it isn't sunny outside. Maybe it's a different setting outside. Is it raining outside? So that's what our brain does. And coming down to it, I think that's the main takeaway of this live event. The most exciting emotions that you can create are the ones we don't show. It's what happens up here, because it always comes down to, in German we say Kino im Kopf, which basically means having the movie in your head. Because the movie in your head is always going to be stronger, no matter how amazing the storyteller, the cinematographer, the DP, the director is, no matter how amazing those people are, it's never going to be better than our imagination. Just think about fear. We can be afraid of something like crazy, even if we don't see it, because it's even stronger because we're not facing it. So our best way, for example, to face fears is to approach them and say, well, I'm really scared of this, but let me have a look at this. And then when you look at it, you say, no, maybe it's not even that bad. And that's a process we go through as humans on different levels, whatever we're talking about, this comes into play. But again, talking about single source lighting, this single source coming through the window suddenly tells a completely different story than if I go like this. I just broken the mood, right? It's just like, okay, it's a bright room, whatever. But if I go like this, it's all of a sudden, ooh, something different's happening. If Slaja turns on the light, we all of a sudden say, look at this. Suddenly it's a different mood again. And we're not seeing the window. And see what happened if you turn off the light again? Okay, it's a gloomy day outside, maybe morning, maybe evening, and then Slaja turns on the light. It's dark outside, right? Suddenly you look at this and you say, whoa, it must be almost getting dark. And that's, again, happening in our mind. So whatever what we look at, something different's happening because it's happening outside the frame. And that's the reason, with the honor I had to work with amazing cinematographers, it was always about being so meticulous about telling the story that is happening outside of the frame. Because that story, you could say nobody sees us, nobody cares. It's the opposite. That's what you care most about, because this is actually telling a story. Because right now, you just have two people sitting in a couch. But what the lighting's doing now is just completely different. And that's what it comes down to when we're talking about setting up lights. Where do we position them? What moods do we want to have outside of the window? That's what it's all about. And if you try to recreate, let's say, oh, the contrast is not good, let's bring in more contrast. If you don't take care about the story we're telling we're outside by bringing it inside, then we're going to lose the story. And I think that's the main thing when it comes down to telling that story. And getting back to the fact of saying the most, how should I say, the most amazing thing, what happens in their minds when our synapses connect and we say, oh, wow, there's one thing we saw and there's a second thing we saw, and boom, suddenly the story gets bigger. You know, there's actually a main thing that discovered this, and that's been the basic of storytelling. I don't know, maybe even since the Stone Age. But to look at it in a frame that's not from the Stone Age is a comic. You see that? The comic works exactly with this. Just look at this. You have over here a guy screaming, no, 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 and somebody running with an axe. And then next to it you have, wow, and you see the city. Our brain takes this image and puts it to this one, because if we just see this, As an image, it might be, well, what's happening? Somebody's screaming in the night. There might even be a cat, or I don't know, two lovers, whatever it is. But this all of a sudden is a different story. And the technical term in comics is called a gutter, because it's about this, what's happening exactly in between here. This is the strength of our imagination. And this is exactly where the power lies when it comes to cinematic storytelling. It's that what we don't show. It's that what we put outside of the frame and then let put into the room to say the mood that we're trying to create from that instance. And of course, we can say the contrast is too high. We just can turn on a lampshade and we're done. Of course, you're right. I'm not trying to say that. What I'm trying to say is we need to take care of it. We need to take care of the lights, the stories we tell, and we've got the responsibility with the light, even if technically we say we need more light over here to continue the story. Because if we break that storyline, we lose emotions. And that's exactly what we don't want to do. So, sorry, I'm going to say one thing. Dani is always going to interrupt us because there's some questions coming up, and that's what we're here for. So, obviously, happy for all the questions.
This is some input. It's some people are saying that the blacks are super crushed.
Yeah.
It's tough
to see,
to judge contrast.
Yes. That, of course, still is maybe our connection as well, because we're streaming live. This, I guess, is better, but the blacks are crushed. But let's, for a moment, stay with that. Let's stay with the fact of saying the blacks are crushed, right? What does that mean? That means you can't see my dark side. That means all of a sudden, when Slaj is talking to me, you can't actually really see what she's thinking, what's going through her mind, because you can't see her face. So that's actually something we can use. And again, it actually helps us tell the story. Can you turn off the light for a second? There we go. It's even worse now, right? Now Slaj is there in the dark, I'm in the bright. That's a story that we're telling because we don't see Slaja. So Slaja could have any kind of a mood she wants. We're not seeing it. We're putting it into your imagination. And that's what it's all about. So putting up contrast, even I know technically maybe you're saying it's too much, could be totally right, but I hope it just proves the point of saying having directional light sources, having a light source come from one direction, keeping people in the shadow or not in the shadow really helps, especially, you know that story from Apocalypse Now with Marlon Brando, and it was really fighting to show, you know, the brutality of war. And so what Vittorio Storaro did is he put a lampshade just above his head. And what then the actor could do is he could move out of the light and into the light. So he was using that single source lighting to help the actor tell his story, because he could decide when he's seen and when it's not seen. And this, of course, is a big choice to make, that we can't see Slaja, but we can see Jacob. If you turn it around, let's swap the places. It's exactly the opposite, right? So now it's Slaja in the light and Jacob's in the dark. So we can swap those things out and make sure. And so we see, of course, with her head and with her hair, which obviously I don't have, you get more of the darkness. And with me, you see now a little bit more of the face. But it hopes that helps you tell how important it is to keep that direction and not be too afraid of the contrast, and actually to use the shadow to tell a story. But then again, we get into exactly the point you're all making. Absolutely right. If the blacks are too crushed on that end, we have to help technically to lift those shadows up a little bit. That's something we should do, of course. So let's have a look at that. And for that, what I'd like to do is, we can swap back. What we can do is, because Laj is in charge of the light bulb, so that's the reason she has to sit there. So what I want to show you right now is we're going to swap cameras, and we're going to go to a technical setup of what we're doing. There we go. So what we have right here now is we've got the whole setup. What we have outside in front of the window are two snap bridges. We can get more into detail about how cool and fast and easy it actually is. And the more we're using it here in the studio, the more fun it is with the color bounces as well, to bring some light inside. What we also have here on the top, and we'll look into this, is an 8x8 frame. So we then have the chance to then just say, we're just going to bounce some light into that to get, some top light into the room. And then we also have, here's the Q8 down below. There we go. And then we have over here above the lampshade, we have a little 50x50 diffusion 2 reflector. We're going to use that to extend the light. And that light's actually here coming from the aperture of 300x with the spotlight mount. So that's our simple little setup. There's maybe one thing here on the side. Here's the V8, the vortex. Actually, there's a vortex V8 going into the snap bridges, and we've got the V4 over here giving us the fill light into the room that I was showing you. So that's our simple little setup that we're going to be working off from the next couple of times. Yeah, there we go. I actually can go over here, set that up again. Okay, so thanks, Donnie. We can go from there. So when we're talking about motivation, we're talking about the window. Maybe Louise, you can zoom back so we can see the window as well. Okay, so we got the window from one direction, right? So when we say we want to extend the light from the window, it totally makes sense, for example, to use an 8x that's coming from the direction of the window to bring some fill light into the room. So you can see it here already. We're lifting already the blacks on the back wall. And if Louisa pans back, we're also going to see, and you actually can do a close-up of Slaja. We can have a look at that from there. There we go. So here it's an easy, nice setup. They just bring in a little bit of fill light. But again, look at the difference of the story that we're telling over here. From doing something dark, just you really feel the window more. And now we're starting to lose the window, this single window that obviously, again, it always depends on the story we're trying to say from there. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we can do here as well. Let's see what I was trying to talk about. Okay, so one other thing that we can do is we can bring in some fill light from the top as well, not only from the side that we wrap around the window, but what happens is if there's a window there, you're also going to get some bounce actually back from the ceiling as well. So we could do that as well. And again, now you see how we're really starting to ruin it, right? Really starting to lose the feeling of a window. Now, all of a sudden, you know, we got a beautiful face and it's all lit and it's nice. But if Louisa zooms back, we have a little bit of a feeling of direction, but it's a totally different thing. Let me just bring down, this is the V4. That's the contrast from the 6x6 frame with the light grid. And here's the top light. So you see, this is just the window. Now we're bringing a bounce from the ceiling. And also you can see the real big giveaway. You see the shadow on the back on the lampshade. That's really telling us the light's coming from the wrong direction. And that's the stuff when we talk about single source lighting, cinematic lighting, storytelling. What's that for a story? Do we have like lamp coming like that's just a top bounce, right? Maybe, okay, so there's maybe, I don't know, there's maybe something in the ceiling that's coming down here that's giving us the feeling for doing so. But it's a completely different story if I do something like this to doing something like this, right? So I think that's the main thing when we talk about establishing directions. Establishing, we have a window here, we saw it. Now we're going to move on to the next stage from over here. So I think that's the most important thing. And just to point out again, everybody on Instagram that's being worried they can't see anything, please swap to YouTube because that's the best thing. To go ahead. And thank you. Yes, the live quality has improved. We have learned some of our lessons. We're not doing the lives as much anymore as we used to because we're all back busy traveling the world to bring the light to all of you of the Lightbridge. So that's what's going on right now. But again, as always, the most important thing for us to support all of you out there to make sure that you all have the high quality tools you need to create, your stories. That's all it comes down to. So please let us know if there's topics you need us to cover. I'm happy to chat from my experience as a gaffer for all the years, and always happy to bring in friends and colleagues to talk about different things as well. So there we go. Okay, so getting back to it. We have the lighting setup. Let's look at something completely different. Again, talking about single source lighting. We might have to adjust the aperture on this. What I'm going to do now is, we saw this earlier. Could you hop back, Dani, to the other frame? So if I swap back here, you're going to see over here, hiding behind the 4x4 frame. Excellent choice, Jacob. Hiding behind there is a C100, a 1x1 meter, close to 4x4 foot, 100 reflector with a diffusion 1. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to push an RA orbiter into this. So let me see how this works. No, some technical issues. Ari doesn't like us. Wir haben den Rahmen davor, ja. Excellent choice. I did a quick improvement and now we have to bring the frame back. Are you on? Give us 1 second. Beautiful thing about light. There we go. Thank you. Perfect. Danke, Luise. Okay, super. Most important word to learn when you come to Austria, Germany. Danke. Thank you. Very important. So here we go. So what we have over here now is some moonlight. So I'd like to point something out. I'll go to the frame. If you look If you can zoom back a little bit, just that we show the full beauty of the moonlight. Maximum zoom back, then just pan up a little bit, that we show the frame. There we go. And a little bit the window too. If you pan over, then we can see Slage's hand. Shrink. Yeah, stop. There you go. Perfect. Okay, super. So it looks like really parallel, right? You can see the shadows here coming down here. The reason is because the orbiter is standing like 20, 40 feet away or 30 feet away from the C100 reflector. And because we're reflecting a double, it looks so natural coming so far away. So again, we have this feeling of just moonlight coming into the room. And if Louise pans back again a little bit, super. See, I'm in the shadow. Okay, so here we go again with our extremes, right? Now that's a story, right? That's a little bit spooky here for Slage sitting here right now. Yeah, this bald guy sitting here. So basically what we can do now is we can lift the levels, right? So here's something we'll try with all the versions we set up to see what's going to happen. Let's start out saying we need more fill light in a room. So let's bring up the fill light. And then obviously I have to change a little bit the color temperature to go a little bit cooler, that it matches the rest. Wow, we really messed this up, huh? This looks horrible. So why is this horrible? And again, coming back to the point of saying we had a motivation. We had a motivation of a window bringing in some light. Let's actually do that. If Slaja walks to the window again, and Louisa pans, this is nighttime, right? And now she's in the window looking outside. This is night light. So we actually are showing there is no other light except the moonlight outside coming in. And then if you sit down again, and then I bring up the light again, and I bring this light up, all of a sudden we're just panicking. Jacob's in the shadow, we can't do that, let's bring up some fill light. But this looks like a really bad, I don't know what kind of show, at least I don't want to even be in or be on it. So there we go. So that's obviously a bad choice to do that. So the second choice we would have is to say, well, let's bring in some fill light from outside. So we had this kind of warm to show what we were doing, but we would obviously go cooler now. See, that already looks better, right? Why does this look better? Because we're bringing in the same, I take this down to 0 again, and now we take it up again. So there we go. Okay, this is just Slaja. And now we're going to bring up a little bit of fill light also from the room. This could maybe work. So again, here we're coming back to the crushed shadows. I'm sorry if you're watching on the screens, it's too crushed. I don't know how to fix this with the internet connection. But the basic idea is to show, let's take the same direction. That's the simplest, easiest choice to do. Say, okay, so let's have our hard light coming in from the moonlight, and obviously the moonlight's going to bounce around a little bit. Let's just motivate it from the same side. And the motivation's actually really helping bring the exposure levels up or do what we need to do because we love the moonlight, but obviously it's a different story if I'm in the shadow. So that's something we can do to bring from the same direction. So let's look at actually what would happen if we would bring it up in the room, the bounce. Okay, see, so let's do this. I go cooler again to take this into this light. This is weird, no? Because now it looks like an aquarium or something. Because now the light's coming from the top down. I'm getting like some weird top light, and Sludge is still getting the light. It's too warm, too cool. There we go. Everything powered by Gaffer's control, bird riskants. There we go. So this is a weird combination of lighting, but again, why is it weird? Because I'm getting the light from the top, Sludge is getting it from the side. We're killing the single source idea. We're just trying to add more light into the room, but to keep the direction is actually super important if we want to mode it from a certain size. Of course, we could make this look gorgeous too, but then again, it would be like really softer from the top, adding in a little bit from the side. But it's always about a question of contrast that we want to have for the story, and it's also a question of how much motivation do we want from the raw quality of a single source light. Yeah, exactly. So this is that. There's actually something I quickly want to say. There was this scene, I can't remember the movie, Roger Deakins shot it, and it was a Coen brother movie, The Man Who Wasn't There, or something like that, black and white movie. And there was a scene in a room with two guys fighting, and there was only one lamp bulb on the table. And I remember reading an interview, and it was Deakins or his gaffer was saying, like, you can light streets, you can do everything you want, but take two people into a room with a single light bulb, then it gets complicated. Why? Because you still need to see everybody. It still has to have a strong emotional impact, and it all has to play around one perfectly set light source. So yes, single source lighting can be tricky because not everything's lit, but just think about the quality of playing around to position the lights correctly to make it work. It's going to be much faster than setting up all the other lights, but at the same time, you got to have the chance to create beautiful, impactful light like this. Moonlight. If I'm out of the frame and Louisa zooms in a little bit and we get the creepy guy out of the frame, it might start to work like this. See, there you go. And all of a sudden it's gorgeous, right? You have a single source. Yeah, exactly. See, it's really singing to the moon. and there we go. And we can build something from this here. Okay, so this is the moonlight. Donnie's got something, yeah?
I have a question. Michelle says, in this scenario, would adding field light from the same side of the key help in maintaining the single source field?
Yes, I will do that immediately. We can bring in the V8 from outside and just bring in a little bit of fill from the same direction. That actually helps. Obviously, this can be done then more precisely. We just got the setup for one setup outside, but just lifting the level from that direction really helps. And you can also, motivate bouncing the light. So let's say we don't want to do this. We want to keep it really dark, but you want some more light on me. It's going to be too dark, I think. Yeah, that's not enough. But basically adding a bounce inside from the floor, the light hitting the floor, coming up into the face, that could also motivate this one light source, make it feel like it's actually filling up the room a little bit more. So that could help too in this case. But this is like a fast fix for us right now. To keep the levels, I can build up in the dark. Then we got Slaja in the moonlight. Done. Also, like another thing is, again, if we swap it around, let's turn on the light, please. Perfect. So now we got like this weird combination of stuff. I'll just take this all down again so we know what we're talking about. So now we have the moonlight outside plus the tungsten light. So what we see immediately is, whoa, that's strong moonlight, right? Because what we know is moonlight's always the least powerful light source at night. So actually we really need to take this down to a level where we have the feeling of, yeah, that might maybe work if we want to do something like that. That's maybe, I don't know if this really looks great, but that's something we could do if we want to. But to keep to the single source lighting, because again, here we say double source, right? We get from one direction. And if we zoom in a little bit on Slajo, please. Here we're playing with two things. I'll actually show this. See how gorgeous the silhouette is? Because the light source is a little bit behind her and it's coming up front. So what we can do is here, if I take the light source and we say, well, this is fine. Can you zoom out a little bit? Then we can show actually what's happening. So there we go. Okay, so we have, what I can do is now deciding the scene, I can bring the light source a little bit around like this. So if you now zoom in again, we all of a sudden have much more light on Slaja, and it looks much better. And I can bring it more to the front as well. Could be the light bulbs here too, no? So if we zoom back again, this still is a single source, but suddenly we got more contrast. But if, of course, we say again, nah, actually we want to have this light back here, it should be really moody, but let's play off the silhouette. I just can place the light back there. And all of a sudden, we got the silhouette to play from. So this is like super fast and easy solutions to play from there. Okay, so there we go from there. Okay, if any questions come up, do please ask it, because this is a live event. We could do this otherwise very differently. Okay, but let's say this is great, but we need to extend the light. So that's actually what we're going to do now. If Louisa zooms back, we can show the whole setup. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring in some fill light into the room. So let's have a look at this. If Louisa just pans up, just maybe shows the light source. Let me just quickly do a quick fix here. So there we go. Just shrink off here. So you see up there, we got a C50 50 by 50 centimeter reflector, diffusion number 2 with fingerprints. We love those, and because we like to clean afterwards. But the cool thing is now, see what's happening? It's a silhouette, but I'm extending the light from the same direction. And because I'm using the slick reflectors, I can place them above a window, and I can really get the feeling of imitating, again, the feeling from light pushing down. And the cool thing now is, if we think about this, and we saw earlier in the shot, we got the 8x8 frame up there. I can, of course, say now, well, let's actually bring up a little bit of fill in the room. And if I bring in the fill from the same direction, it's still going to work. Why? Because I'm still maintaining the idea where the light's coming from. I'm playing off the idea of saying, well, of course, the lampshade's going to bounce on the ceiling, and that's going to give us a little bit of light down. But again, it's all about the contrast. If we go like this, it's ridiculous, right? And even here, you'd say, this light's not coming from a lampshade. But if I take it down to a certain level where it could play, it could totally work. And I can also then say, well, can we just extend the light up a little bit from the side as well? So we, again, maybe could even fake some light, bringing it from outside, just add a little bit. It all comes down to balancing the levels. And how do we measure those balancing of the levels? We do so by saying the brightest part is the lampshade. And from there we go ahead and we say, let's extend the light down with a push with a beautiful Diffusion 2 Lightbridge reflector. Let's bring in a little bit of fill from the ceiling. You know, fill from ceilings can be horrible, but setting it to the right level, to the practical, it actually works. And then I'm actually even adding a SnapBridge light from the outside. So there are giveaways. For example, we set up really simple, 2 people sitting on a couch. Well, that's very simple. But if Slajo stands up and walks to the window now, let's see if the setup still works. We get maybe a little bit too much top light already. We can see it on Slajo's shoulder because she should be much more in silhouette. And let's please ignore the SnapBridge outside for the moment. I'll just take it down to give us a feeling of it. So here we see there's maybe too much bounce coming from the ceiling. We can't actually play this. So this is realistic, right? There's no light source there, but we said we need to extend it. So what we do is, this is even without the Diffusion 2 reflector. This is with the Diffusion 2 reflector. You see how subtle it is? When you use a Lightbridge Precision Reflector to extend the light, it really plays subtly off it. Obviously, Slaja knows light, so she knows how to move and position herself to it. Not always the case with actors, as much as I love them. And there we go. And suddenly we really can play off of this. Turn off again the light from the top, bring it back on. Totally works because it's extending that level of what we're going to. And if Slaja sits down again, we then actually can bring up a little bit of fill light from there too. And if we want to, we could add a second reflector on top to actually send some light, so I get more too. And depending on if we're panning up and down. So that's basically what it comes down to when we're talking about what's outside a frame we would not expect. So extending light from an existing light source is something we would not expect. So it's always this cheat part of the whole thing, right? What can we get away with at that level to still have the feeling of a single source lighting? And that's what it basically comes down to. So one last thing we should look at, let's again go back to the idea of saying, let's bring in the daylight. So if we go ahead, for example, now, and we say we bring up the Vortex 8 here. So we bring it in from outside, and we have suddenly daylight coming in. Maybe too warm right now, or too cool. Let's balance it out. Okay. And there we go. And suddenly day is coming back to us again. And then we turn off the light, and suddenly it's there. And I obviously have to turn off. That's just the SnapBridge, the 50x50 diffusion reflector coming down too. We don't need it anymore now. And suddenly we're back to daylight. And again, you know what our minds remember? Oh, there was a window outside. So we actually have that feeling back to bring it back down to the level. The cool thing is, if I just want to show you what we did with the SnapBridge outside. So if Dani, you could push back to the other camera. There we go. I'll just bring up some fill light so we see actually what's going on out there. And I have to pan up a little bit. There we go. And I'll zoom in. So highly equipped. So we have it all. Look at this. Here we have the new color bounces. I'll quickly go out and show this to you. It's really exciting. Together with Bluff Bounce and DOP Choice, because obviously we love partnerships, we came up with colors inside. And actually, a great colleague of ours, Mike Baumann, came up with the idea. He said, guys, this is great with ultra bounce, but actually we need more colors. So I'm using the daylight blue for a top light to give it from the ceiling. And then I'm using a standard snap bridge with 50 by 50 diffusion 3 to give us more push inside. I'm doing the same thing just from 1V8. Just pushing it in, giving us the feeling of the story outside of frame, because the story outside of frame is daylight. We got a sky, and then we got a house bouncing back. Maybe that's the reason Nicholas Bluff also made for us like the combinations of saying daylight blue plus warmer, just to go warm. There's some great videos coming out soon, so you get a feeling for what this is about. Super simple, easy setup to show you how this actually works from there. So this is just a fill light coming from the V4. I'll go back to our setup again. Boom, and there we go. And this is too much again. Not single source lighting. We're giving away what's actually happening outside. That's exactly what the brain does right now. What's this? Yeah, but it looks cool. But does it tell us a story? Maybe it doesn't look cool, but does it tell a story? No, it doesn't. It's just adding some stuff into it that's going away from the idea from single source lighting. In commercials, really important to go sometimes to go away from it, because we're trying to heighten the mood. We're trying to say this is all just amazing, but we're not telling a story of people sitting at a couch without a cocktail. But that's what it is. Yeah, exactly. So that's what it is. Okay, in this way, no more questions come up. We will have our cocktail. Yes, we have a cocktail later. Questions first, definitely.
First question is, if moonlight comes from the window, like the one you did right now, why don't you bounce it from the floor, how it is happening in nature?
Yeah, absolutely true. Extending the light that we're first sending up totally can do this. I just don't want to bore you by putting away gear and putting up more gear to make it work. But I 100% agree. This is exactly what I would do. Add the moonlight coming in, and if we need more fill in the room, just push a Lico into the floor, add a little bit of something nice to make some bounce coming back. And it comes back from the same idea of saying, how does nature behave? How can we make it work? And that's the whole raw quality of the Lightbridge, the Precision Reflectors. Another question?
Awesome. The second one, I need your help maybe, because it's from the same person. And he said, what panel do you have there? And I thought he meant the 50 by 50 to 2, but he said
might be the moonlight, yeah.
Gaffer panel, I mean. So
we're talking about the gaffer's control. I love to show great stuff. So here we go. Spots Unlimited. It's called the gaffer's control. I had it for a lot of years on set. There we go. You can see it. It's just a great, easy device to work it for idiots like myself that never got into DMX. That's just a great thing to do. But I do want to show you one thing. What I'm really proud of, already slowly to slideshow, is like when you go ahead and you light something and you say, I'm actually happy with this. This actually looks cool. The question you always have to ask yourself, like the idea with the skip bounce off the floor, for example, can I add something in? Malevich, an amazing artist in the 30s, he was like saying, what's the additive element? What can I add to this? How can I push myself to become better? And that's the reason I have my cat in here. That always reminds me of, Jacob, you can do better. Lighting actually can be better than that, what it is. So I made myself a little reminder to always say, Jacob, push yourself. You can do more than you just did, which is important because I think that's the way we all grow, by being outside of our comfort zone. And that's the reason I think that's a great thing about single source lighting too. To wrap this up, is like when you do single source lighting, you're going to be ending up in situations that are not perfect. But there's something about this, especially when we're doing 25 frames per second. You want to have moments that are not perfect to get into perfect moments, because those imperfect moments are going to lighten up the perfect moments. And we have the same thing in everything. We need contrast. We need contrast to understand what's going on. We also need contrast from something that is emotionally heightening to emotionally not heightening anymore. That's the reason 30-second commercials work. And if you try to implement that high-paced power, it's just going to tire you out after some time. So we need those fluctuations to make things work. So don't worry about if something is not perfect in a moment. It has to be perfect in emotion. What's the story we're trying to tell? And to reach that point, certain line in the script maybe, or a certain precision that you have to be in, a look from an actor, from an actress. That's where we have to be perfect, but not in between, because single source lighting, as we saw with the light bulb, there's going to be moments it's out of, it's dark, or you get into the light, but it's exactly that movement that really makes it special. And having something like the gaffer's control with me always gave me the feeling I can react in the last second, because that's where the quality comes in, and that's where the whole idea of Lightbridge came from. Quality, 40% in setting up the lights. We're always going to be lighting through windows, right? But what happens when you saw for the first time the take of an actor and actress, instead of the scene playing out, you want to do tweaks. That's where we have to be perfect, because that's where everybody on set decides, oh, this is what the emotion's about. And then we can start to help with lighting. But then again, we can't bring in ladders and stuff because all the actors are working. So we want to set up everything in a way that actually we can tweak to the perfection that we're looking for. Like my cat's always telling me. Anything else? No, I would say we end this. We finally get our cocktail. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining. Thank you, Louisa and Donnie, for helping us out as always. And see you around the next time. Let us know what's going on. Create great, beautiful light, and have a great shooting day. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye. Bene, grazie.